What's up, gamers? Welcome back to another episode of um, the news and grift. Need a name for this. Whatever. Welcome back to another episode of the news. In today's edition, Trump went to China, uh, and the meeting went pretty smoothly. And it seems like the CGTN coverage isn't too different from the Western media coverage. At least, uh, at least by yesterday, but maybe some of the more internationalist outlets were making fun of Trump a little more than American media, like when Trump went to walk in front of the children. Anyway, uh, we can. They'll probably show that stuff here. But yeah, long story short, meeting went well, but at this point, there haven't really been any concrete details about what was agreed to other than that the U.S. will help secure Chinese oil imports, oil and energy imports. And yeah, that's at least what I've seen as of now. Anyway,
President Trump is now on his
keeping
way
it live.
home, boarding Air Force One this morning after his historic summit with Xi Jinping.
Two leaders seeming to have productive talks on issues like trade and investing in America, but other issues like Taiwan, still a tense flashpoint. You're watching Fox and Friends First here on a Friday morning after a very busy week. I'm Todd Pyro.
And I'm Carly Shimkus. So much to break down.
Why does the Fox News music make me feel like I'm in a Marvel Rivals hero choose your hero screen? Like we're ready to rumble at Fox News. Anyway.
Down this morning, and we start with Douglas Zader, who is live in Washington with all the details from President Trump's latest movements overnight. Hi, Doug.
I guess it's because all the boomers who think China is like some, scary, scary tyrant-run peasant society that now, I guess that's what boomers' impression of China is. Although I guess Fox News had some of their anchors go there, go to China, and some of the Chinese netizens, recorded Brett Baer walking in the busy bike lane where all the e-scooters are whizzing by at 30 miles an hour. And they were making fun of him for just filming in the bike lane, ready to get hit by a motor. Anyway, I just wonder all these rabid anti-communists like Rubio and all the people, all the quote unquote serious people at Fox News who are at least try to present a more intellectual and honest uh version of American conservative politics. What goes through their heads when they see China as a more advanced, more high trust, safer, you know, just all around better functional city life, at least in China, especially in the major city centers like Beijing. What goes through these right wingers' heads when they have to face the observable reality of Chinese prosperity under communism? You know, I guess they just have like, oh, well, this is just capitalism, but run by Xi Jinping. It's just state-controlled capitalism. Is I guess the cope. I don't know. Anyway.
Carly and Todd, good morning. The president is on the long flight back to the United States this morning after wrapping up this summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. He's already touting new trade deals and says Xi has offered to help end the war in Iran, but other issues remain unresolved. Let's start with Iran.
If I was a Chinese citizen, it'd be my dream to join the honor guard. And you get to be in all these historic moments. You know, I don't know, whatever. Be cool. Anyway.
Before he left China, the president told Sean Hannity that Xi did offer assistance in ending the conflict, saying China agrees that Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon and that the Strait of Hormuz should reopen, just as reports emerged that another ship was attacked and another was seized.
We did discuss Iran. We feel very similar to Iran. We want that to end. We don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. We want the straits open. We're closing it now. I mean, they closed it, then we closed it on top of them. But we want the straits open. And we want them to get it ended because it's a crazy thing. They're a little bit crazy, and that's no good. Can't have it. They can.
It's a little bit crazy. You know, I only started this whole Iran war, but it's just a little bit crazy.
Not have a nuclear weapon.
And the president says he got a commitment that China would not give Iran what he called military equipment.
It's just a little bit crazy. I only accidentally basically cut the throat of the global petrodollar system. And am now going to China to beg for Xi Jinping to give me money and more financial aid. Because Lord knows I can't run my own damn country. Anyway.
Equipment.
When you say support, they're not fighting a war with us or anything.
No.
He said he's not going to give military equipment. That's a big statement. He said that today. That's a big statement. He said that strongly. But at the same time, he said, you know, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that.
And the president really wanted to focus on new deals with China, including the sales of Boeing aircraft, soybeans, and other American goods. But Xi said very early on that the #1 issue between the U.S. and China was Taiwan, the independently governed island that China lays claim to. His language was pretty pointed in that regard, but there's no indication that U.S. policy toward Taiwan has changed. We will not have to wait too long for a follow-up meeting. The president has...
Yes, because U.S. policy towards Taiwan at least, officially in the geopolitical arena, is recognizing Taiwan as China. But when it comes to communicating our foreign policy on Taiwan to domestic Americans, you know, we, well, the media, this guy, and the State Department mouthpiece will often, you know, try to war hawk it, make it seem like China wants war with Taiwan, and they're ready to militarily invade Taiwan any month, kind of like how Iran was ready to build a nuke in 2 weeks for the last 30 years. You know, it's that same kind of, oh, there's an imminent threat here, but we can't address it immediately, so have it in the back of your mind as a way for us to justify stockpiling weapons in Taiwan, and also saber rattling against China. Have that in the back of your mind so that we can do those things. Because ultimately what America wanted was control over the Chinese mainland, and Taiwan was the best way, or is the best entry point for America to get its foot in the door as far as, contesting CPC rulership. Anyway.
Invited Xi to visit the U.S. in September. Carly and Todd.
It's a home-and-home series here on the diplomatic front. Doug Luzader, thank you. With that, let us bring in Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. And Gordon, we're going to pick up where Doug left off, the major issue of Taiwan. Did anything materially change with respect to Taiwan following this summit?
One word answer, no. It was very clear. Although Xi Jinping issued those very stark words, Secretary of State Rubio was very clear. U.S. policy has not changed. And so I think we're going to see very little in the way of China action on Taiwan. The problem here for Xi Jinping is that his military is not ready to invade, and the United States is standing firm.
Yeah, because they never had the intention of invading Taiwan. Their goal has been peaceful reunification, at least post Mao. After the Mao era, that's what they've been working towards. Some kind of democratic, popular resolution to bring Taiwan de jure and de facto under Communist Party of China. Anyway.
The people in Taiwan, they want good relations with Beijing, but they don't self-identify as Chinese. They see themselves as Taiwanese. I think the status quo will continue. And the status...
Yeah, and I'm not familiar enough with the local attitudes of the average Taiwanese person, but I know they have lots of personal connections to mainland China via work, family, or vacation. Because, mainland China offers great solutions for all of that. A lot of opportunity. But I don't, Taiwan was created after the KMT, the nationalists, lost the Chinese Civil War to the communists, and they fled with the treasures from the palace to Taiwan, where Chiang Kai-shek, the murderous fascist dictator, military leader is a better, more precise term, because he wasn't... hard to consider Chiang Kai-shek a head of state when the KMT never really had a formal state. But no. Unlike Ukraine, it wasn't necessarily Taiwan wasn't formed with the idea of being distinct. Creating a distinction between the Taiwanese population and the Chinese population. Ukraine is Ukrainians versus Russians, like creating a nationalistic project, you know. It was, you know, in its founding, it was, you know, as Taiwan was formed, it was the KMT called it the Republic of China. And the rulership, you know, over what became Taiwan thought of themselves as Chinese. Because there's been a lot, you know, historic ties between Taiwan and the Chinese mainland go back thousands of years, you know.
This quo is great for the United States, it's great for Taiwan, and it's great for the free world.
You mentioned Secretary of State Marco Rubio talking about the United States' current stance when it comes to Taiwan. Here he is doing just that.
$5. That's how much I'm hoping you'll contribute to our campaign to take back Texas.
So I know. Anyway, I said all that really slowly, thinking carefully through my words. Basically to say, yeah, I'm not sure this guy knows what he's talking about, or whether the nationalistic project or nationalist identity of the average Taiwanese person is that significant to them, you know. But maybe it is. I'm sure it is to some or many of the Taiwanese.
U.S. policy on the issue of Taiwan is unchanged as of today, and as of the meeting that we had here today. It was raised.
Like, I know the Ukraine, like a national identity to the Ukrainians is important to them. Very much so. Anyway, that's irrelevant.
Always raise it on their side. We always make clear our position, and we move on to the other topic. I think China's preference is probably to have Taiwan voluntarily join them. We think it would be a terrible mistake to force that through force or anything of that nature. There would be repercussions for that globally, not just from the United States.
Yeah, he thinks it. Here he's saying it would be a mistake for the U.S. to allow that, because then, you know, China would have pretty tight control over the semiconductor and chips manufacturing industry and market. That's the, you know, and that presents a, that presents, you know, I read a message, lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, that you know, semiconductor manufacturing industry potentially presents a national security risk to the US if you think that the US faces any actual legitimate national security risks. Me personally, I don't, because like the natural resources the US has are more than plenty to accommodate for whatever loss in imports or control over international trade we may lose to China. Because, you know, if we actually had a competent government that was interested in building up the country as a whole and not just serving corporate lobbyists. But yeah. But if all things stay the same, China takes control of Taiwan and the US loses its control over semiconductor manufacturing, and China actually does hold that leverage over the US. You know, assuming the worst about the intentions of the Chinese government, yeah, sure, it's a terrible mistake. If you just assume the Chinese government are like evil and looking to dominate in the same way that the US is.
There was an $11 billion arms sale, Gordon, that was approved in December, has not yet been fulfilled. Another $14 billion one that's awaiting approval. These weapons would be sold to Taiwan. I'm sure that one of Xi Jinping's goals was to make sure that this arms sale doesn't go through. So what does President Trump do here regarding these arms?
We're just going to have to wait and see. And that really is the answer for most issues following this summit. You know, Carly, most summits are canned. Everything is decided before the foreign leader arrives in Beijing. This one wasn't. There was actually work done in those discussions among Chinese and U.S. officials.
Well, the analysis I heard about this is that China doesn't exactly let foreign delegations know whether or not whether or not they'll even be meeting with President Xi, or like all the details of their, visit to China, because it's a negotiating tactic to make the foreigners a little more grateful that you're giving them the attention and time,
So I think what we're going to see going on are a number of announcements on things. And one of them is that there will be an announcement on the new arms package at some point. The Chinese are very intransigent on a lot of things. We heard some pretty defiant words from Xi Jinping on Thursday, dismissive of the United States. So I think that essentially we're going to see the Trump administration impose costs on China, just as China's been imposing costs on us in the run-up to the summit. And I think that that will continue afterwards. The competition continues, and this is going to be, I think, good for the United States.
Gordon, I'm trying to view Taiwan through the lens of the average American, because we always talk about it in the abstract. The average American, you're told you need to care about Taiwan. But why? Why should the average American care about something so abstract? Is it all about sort of that key test of America?
I don't know if this is just like a new guy at Fox News or not, but he seems so distressed just from his body language. He's like, what are we even talking about? I was not taught about any of this stuff, and now I'm finding out almost everything I learned about China was a lie. What is going on? Why should the average American care about this?
American credibility on the world stage, or is it something as tangible as like, we need all the semiconductors to do what we want to do? Why does the average American care, Gordon?
Okay, first of all, one Taiwanese company makes 92% of the world's most sophisticated semiconductors. The other 8% are made in South Korea, which is going hard left right now. So if the U.S. wants a future with semiconductors, then we are going to have to defend Taiwan. If the U.S. wants South Korea, which is going hard left right now.
What? Okay. My God. The rest are in South Korea, which is going hard left right now. So the implication this guy is saying is that if South Korean democracy continues as is, the U.S. will lose its semiconductor, like part of its semiconductor stockpiles. You know what I mean? Like, what does the political leaning of South Korea have to do with, like, semiconductor trade? Like, you think they're gonna reunify with North Korea and then just fucking Like all of a sudden the US is gonna lose access to South Korean manufacturing? Like what? Okay, anyway, that's
So if the U.S.
just brilliance coming from the Fox News guests always, you know.
wants a future with semiconductors, then we are going to have to defend Taiwan.
Well, I assume this is like Gatestone Institute. I don't know what that is. Never mind. I was gonna say, I want to assume that this guy is like a Falun Gong type, you know, a Falun Gong type of guy. A real big fan of Shen Yun, you know. But I don't know this guy's background. I'm sure if I were to Google it, there'd be something like that, right? Anyway.
But it's much
joke.
more than that. You know, Todd, you mentioned U.S. credibility. After the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, a key test of U.S. credibility and resolve is our willingness to defend the free society of Taiwan. But we also got to remember that Taiwan sits in the middle of our Western defense perimeter, something that we drew in the 1800s. And Taiwan prevents the Chinese Navy and Air Force from surging into the Western Pacific.
Yeah. Like China. Dude, what? This is awesome. It's hard to tell whether these guys legitimately think China is preparing to do an all-out invasion of their of like the Philippines, Indonesia, what other countries? Australia. You know, China's ready to do all this, and it's just little old Taiwan standing in the way. Even though we have like US military people at the heights of the US military saying our strategy on Taiwan is just to abandon it if China ever invades. And you know, you have the head of our State Department officially coming out and recognizing that China's goal is peaceful reunification with Taiwan. Like, he said that in this piece, in this Fox News piece here. Marco Rubio said China's goal is peaceful reunification with Taiwan. And this guy's like, China's gonna go fucking invade the Philippines, dude, if we don't defend Taiwan. And it's, oh my god, like what kind? If you're a Fox News viewer and you're taking all these people at their word and you trust like everything they're saying, like what kind of, you know, ping pong brain, you know, ping pong, how do I say this? Ping pong brain, I don't know, disability have you developed just from watching Fox News and trusting it? You know?
There are other reasons as well. We know, China's attacking democracy. We cannot allow the Chinese to absorb any democracy, especially one as.
They're attacking democracy by trying to peacefully reunify with Taiwan, as Marco Rubio said here. Oh, brilliant.
As important as Taiwan, because there would be inevitable propaganda saying that the U.S. was finished. We know this because we heard that after the fall of Afghanistan. So this is from many different perspectives. We need to defend Taiwan. And by the way, because the Chinese aren't ready to invade it yet, this is a great time to sell Taiwan everything that it wants.
Yeah, well, the president right now on Air Force One. This was his 7th face-to-face meeting with Xi Jinping. Describes their relationship as very good, even a friendship. With all of that in mind, and the president heading back to Washington, D.C. now, What would you say your top takeaway, your major headline from this trip after all is said and done is?
We will only know that as these agreements are announced. And it's going to take some time for China and the United States to hammer them out. One thing that I'd like to see immediately would be Jimmy Lai freed, the Hong Kong dissident. He's a real hero of freedom. President Trump said he was going to raise the issue with Xi Jinping. We need to protect those people that China is persecuting mercilessly. And we got to know that Jimmy is 77 years old. He's in very poor health. He's held in really miserable conditions in Hong Kong. I'd like to see President Trump with a renewed effort to get him free.
Yeah, it seems like President Trump does have capacity to get people in these kind of situations free. We'll see if it happens to Jimmy. Gordon Chang, thank you as always for your insight. I appreciate it, sir.
Be sure to like.
You know, what goes through the heads of these Chinese guys who have spent, like, their whole lives working their ass off, studying, pushing paper, writing, analyzing data, fucking, I don't know, you know, whatever, you know, all these, like, party officials with, like, doctorates in like STEM fields and whatever. They meet Donald Trump. Like all these guys, like some of the most merited people in the world at the top of the Chinese leadership here. You know, with some of the strongest backgrounds. They're like here. Oh, nice to meet you, Mr. Pedophile President, who Israel bought the election for. You're such a honorable and important guy, you know. Like, what's going through their heads, you know? This is going to be more Fox
does
News
not equal arousal. That's what Blue Chew Gold is here to solve. This 4-in-1 formula activates your natural sex drive.
President Trump is on his way home following.
I heard him out. Are you going to take your word out?
Here to Washington in September. That date is notable because there will be some trade deadlines that would go into effect in October. Order was less than analyzed.
Well, that's nice. She's taking one for the team, you know? Ugh. History's not going to look fondly upon him for these kind of photos, you know? Here with my friend, you know, exploring the Temple of Heaven. What a beautiful place. Anyway, what did Trump say?
It's to help end the conflict.
On Taiwan, he does not want to see a fight for independence because that would be a very strong confrontation. And I heard him out. Are you going to take your word? No, I didn't make a comment on it. I heard him out. I have a lot of respect for him. On Iran, it's very interesting. He feels strongly they can't have a nuclear weapon. He said that very strongly. They cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I think their official position is against nuclear proliferation. At least their public position is to be against nuclear proliferation. But maybe they did. Maybe he did tell Trump that just to like, just to trick him. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure China is like more neutral on the issue of Iran having nukes. At least effectively. they're trying to basically just get the US to cut it out in the nicest ways possible, is my read on it. They're like, hey, we're partners, right? Maybe we don't destroy the world because we're beating you at your own game. Like, that's China's posture towards the US. Hey, can you guys calm down, please? You know, we kind of like have a good thing going here. Be nice if you didn't fuck it up. Oh, and if you do fuck it up, then I guess it'll just be a Chinese century of global domination. You know, or at least that's kind of, you know, they're trying to give Donald Trump all the chances in the world to, you know, come out of this Iran situation without, you know, destroying the global economy or totally nuking his domestic agenda, which he doesn't really have a domestic agenda anymore, because that was already passed under like the big beautiful bill. And Trump's domestic policy agenda is just to do more ICE roundups and consolidate power so that the Republicans can hopefully hold on to the election legitimate, or can hold on to Congress and the presidency through the legitimate American voting process. That's all that's left of Trump's agenda. I don't know. But all these other foreign countries, or all these countries, have learned basically how you get what you want out of Trump is just to treat him like, you know, the special guy, the special little man, you know. And that's what happened behind closed doors too, I assume. Like if like when Trump goes to these negotiations, none of the real negotiations are happening with Donald Trump. You know, like sure, maybe he's giving some input to some big items. But you know, the things that were said between Trump and President Xi probably were just more superficial, or typically just more superficial kind of posturing, public posturing. And you know, because Trump can't keep his mouth shut, who knows what Xi was trying to get across to him, hoping that he'd go repeat it on American media too. You know? Like if I was Xi, I'd be like, I don't know, what's one thing? What's one thing he could trick Trump on? I'd be like, Trump, what was like one kind of left issue Trump ran on? Fuck, I can't even. What's something no, I'd be like, Trump, you know, we here in China we really believe in Israel's right to defend itself, but Israel can't have a right to defend itself if it keeps bombing Gaza. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I'd try to like fucking um do something like that. Maybe get across maybe trick Trump into accidentally taking a more peaceful foreign policy. or at least enunciating a more peaceful foreign policy in Israel. We here in China really love trading with Israel. Tiny nation, small as New Jersey. You know, they have really good surveillance tech. Best in the world. It's the hottest country. That's what she said. And, you know, but we really gotta stop. But you gotta get I don't know, something. You know, I can't think of something on the fly that would be genius as a way to get Donald Trump into like enunciating arms embargo on Israel. How would China do that? Anyway, maybe I should stop trying to come up with some stupid idea.
That he wants them to open up the strait.
As the Wall Street Journal points out today, the broad takeaway in Beijing was that Trump and Xi both sought an end to a 10-year era in which the U.S. sought to blunt economic and security threats from China.
Yeah, this 10-year era started, I think, and after the U.S. kind of stabilized from the 2008 financial crisis and China helped bail us out. You know, we kind of started posturing as a way, you know, to get to in a way to kind of do a Cold War against China, or at least the right wing did. This was before Trump even started his political career coming down that golden escalator. But, you know, China had just started their major housing development plan in that time. You know, the Western, like, I was a dumb kid when this was happening, and what I remember from it was like, oh, ghost cities. China's just building ghost cities. What for? Are they dumb? How could this work? Don't you know supply and demand? I think I had taken like a high school level economics course by then. So I learned about, I don't know, it was civics. I'd taken a civics class. I don't know. I learned some basic stuff about that. I was like, I don't know. I was like, oh, whatever. I don't know. I had no idea what was going on in China. It just, you know, seemed like an alien world at that point in my life when I was a dumb little kid. But anyway, yeah, this was kind of low key a Cold War. It just wasn't announced because the US had kind of realized that we'd run up the trade deficit on China. So by like shipping all our manufacturing jobs over there and moving global manufacturing, because China, through its reform and through us dropping sanctions on China, was able to bring in a lot of foreign companies to build factories and bring jobs into the country, to build up the country, you know, under Deng. You know, we had that going for a while, and it treated us really nicely up until 2008. Then I think the US kind of noticed, hey, wait, actually China, or at least the intelligent people in the upper echelons of the US government kind of noticed, like, hey, wait, actually China is kind of, building themselves up potentially enough to compete with us as an economy and military power. We might need to start, trying to cut them off at the heels, or cut them off at the knees and prevent them from being able to, get into the markets we dominate, like in Latin America. So that's where, more, against, it's been a long chain of events, like sanctions against Venezuela, against embargoes against Cuba, and all these other lateral economic moves have been made as a way to try to stump China's development over the last 10 years, but none of it really worked. And so that's why we're at where we're at.
China. The president says it's China who desperately needs Iran to reopen the strait. China, of course, gets so much of its oil from Iran, but there's still no commitment yet on what any sort of Chinese intervention would look like in the conflict. As for President Trump and President Xi, they do have that friendly relationship, and it looks like it'll continue. President Trump inviting the Chinese president here to Washington in September. That date is notable because there will be some trade deadlines that would go into effect in October, so likely they'd want to see some sort of deal worked out. As for the president, he is still in flight right now, and he's due back here in Washington.
Especially with Taiwan and these East Asian countries becoming precision manufacturing hubs for electronics. A lot of the anti-China Cold War moves have been not so newsworthy and more so on the economic and market side of things, with the US trying to get ahead of China on things like AI, and also try to control what kind of resources or rare resources and materials get into China
around dinner time. Jillian.
All right, Mark Meredith at 1600 Pennsylvania
anyway,
Avenue for us this morning.
I am not enough of an expert to talk about that at length.
All right, but let's begin with that China trip. President Trump is on his way back to Washington this morning after the two-day summit.
We're going to get some video highlights, or is this just going to be more analysis?
The summit was productive and praised his long-standing relationship with China's President Xi Jinping. The two discussed trade, development, the Iran war, and Taiwan. Just a short while ago on Air Force One, President Trump was asked if he thinks Xi is a dictator. Here's what he said.
I don't think about it. He's the ruler. He's the president of China. I don't think about it. You deal with what you have.
Oh my God, dude. Trump is taking a further left stance than the average Democratic Party politician on China now. Trump is now officially to the left of the average Democrat on Xi Jinping. That's amazing. Except the reason he's to the left of them isn't because, or the reason at least his specific attitude towards Xi is it's left. It's at least more closer to the truth than the average Democrat. But the reason for that is because Trump just wants to be Xi. He wants to be loved, respected, and feared. Because Xi has all of those things. in China, where he is, you know, treated, where Xi Jinping is treated as this, you know, revered figure that, you know, that's loved, respected, and feared by, I don't know, I guess most of the Chinese population, to some degree at least. Obviously, there's still plenty of dissent. You know, like, I met a doctor, slash drug dealer, maybe, who, you know, make a joke about China. He was a Chinese doctor. Well, this is when I was in China. He'd make a joke about how you can piss on the street, but you can't piss on Xi Jinping. Oh, whoa. I don't know. But yeah, I guess that's true about China. Anyway, I just referenced that example to show, like, obviously not everybody in China likes Xi Jinping. You know? And even if, like, he does deliver on the promises, you're never gonna have, even if, you know, he and the party deliver on its promises to the people, you're never gonna have 100% support from the people. You know, there's always gonna be some idiot who thinks he knows better. Anyway. That is to say, Donald Trump is now official. He's not Chinese. He's more Chinese than. Never mind. Donald Trump is a communist? He won't call. He's glazing Xi Jinping? So many amazing moments out of this. God, I should have lined it up better for this video. Like, anyway, let's just go through some highlights. This account was posting them. You know, you have Donald Trump with a bunch of kitties. Obviously, I mean, well, no, not obviously, but, well, I guess if you're not under a normal diplomatic situation, you know, this would just be a, you know, typical standard message of children are the future. But because Donald Trump's Epstein affiliate,
I think I was
file, you know, I think we all know what we're thinking. China's like, hey Trump, look at all these fucking kids. I guess, you know, never mind, I don't even want to go there, but, you know, it is comical. Also this moment. Rubio staring at the ceiling. Wow, I didn't know they had nice things in China. I thought they were a bunch of poor, dirty communists. Nice comment. Like, what goes through these people's heads when they come when they go here and they're like, "Oh wow, everything here is nicer than in the U.S." I don't know. I guess also maybe they could compare now that they're in like the Great Hall of the People. They're like, how does the and Tiananmen Square? They're like, how does this compare to the National Mall and Capitol Hill and the White House? You know, that whole National Mall area in DC. I don't know. I don't know if it's still there, but the last time I was in DC a couple months ago, you know, they had like the White House fenced off for like with like a 2-block radius around the White House, just fenced off. And I guess you can only get in there if you work in some of those offices or at the White House. No, but it's just like, nah, it's so, never mind, the point's, but you know, they're here in Tiananmen Square where everything's nice, neat, you know, because they're fascists. The only thing they, like, their politics almost completely revolves around, like, their reaction to shapes and colors. So, I'm just like, are these people having their minds blown by the power of communism right now? Or, like, you know, what are going through these guys' heads now that they have to face the reality of China? I don't know. Did Stephen Miller have to go, like, I know they went like with, or well, some of these people had already been before, like when they went with Trump in 2017. But, you know, a lot's changed since then. The housing market and everything has only developed, like, from my understanding, almost like exponentially faster Chinese development. And like, you know, their buildup of their cities is only kind of, I assume it'll flatten off sort of, but, you know, since 2017, it's only been like more progress year after year. Like the more excesses of their goals and whatnot. And here in the US, it's like no politician meets any of their campaign promises or anything that they run on. You know, because if they were running on the truth that the American political system is almost fundamentally corrupt, almost, I say almost, because if you were to have publicly funded elections in an election process that at least kind of made sense for a theoretical democracy, you know, we'd be living in a very different world than we do now. You know, like if you had a UK style kind of parliamentary system that, I don't know, at least moderates the the violent swings of a bourgeois capitalist democratic system. The violent, you know, or it at least presents alternatives that are allowed to, you know, compete and become competitive with the mainstream establishment voices. Like in the UK, you have the Greens. You know, they could at least, whatever. If you had a system that would at least allow alternative voices to be competitive instead of having a system, instead of like the system we have now where corporations and special interests can pretty much demonstrably buy elections just via the sheer power of ad spend, you know, since everybody's media diet is so fragmented, like you know, anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, I just wonder what goes through these guys' heads when they see this, you know, their expectation or what communism's supposed to be is like desolate starvation and whatnot. Or maybe they are just like truly evil people, you know, and they're like, we're evil. We know communism is a movement, is a, you know, good idea. We just don't care. You know, I don't know. I guess that's a possibility.
How much do you pay for?
What else? Oh yeah, the foreign minister also gave Trump a really sturdy handshake on the way out. Wonder if they got a video of that. Like, I wonder if like what did Wang Yi say to Donald Trump as Donald Trump was getting on that plane? You know, like, was he like, "You better stick by our deal, you fucking pedo," or something? I don't know. It was like, there's something important that was said there that I really want to know, but may never find out. At least when Donald Trump. You Oh yeah. Never mind, I didn't get an angle of the Wang Yi handshake. Maybe I should have recorded this video when there was some more concrete stuff to report on or talk about, instead of just speculating on the body language and faces and, you know, circumstantial details surrounding this event. I don't know. Anyway, if you like that commentary, YouTubers, like and subscribe. I'll keep doing these for the fans, you know. Obviously, I've got plenty of fans. Why I have 20 subscribers. This is the most entertaining form of content on YouTube. Looking at stuff on the internet and speaking your mind out loud and then pressing upload. Anyway, y'all can support the project by liking and subscribing. See ya.